Matt is about to demonstrate the procedure for changing the RO membranes in this system. Before doing anything mechanical, put the system in standby mode. After we power back up, there will be a long flush where permeate must go straight to the drain. Since installations meet unique application requirements, there's not a set procedure for that. Ultimately, pipe the permeate to the drain for this service. These selections under test outputs are made to verify that the isolation was successful. The first valve Matt will close is the inlet valve to shut off the feed water to the system. Now we'll power down. Off goes the power to the system, and off goes the display. The membranes can be changed in place with the rack extended, or you can pull out the whole rack and place it on a workbench. Make sure the skid is anchored to the floor or attached to the wall, and only pull out one membrane rack at a time. For this demonstration, Matt is changing only one membrane. Start by loosening and disconnecting the compression fitting at the bottom of the tube. You may have to get a bucket ready. This floor slopes to a floor drain, so Matt has no need for a bucket. Now for the compression fittings on the cap and top of the manifold. We didn't get a good angle on the manifold compression fitting, so here's the reverse angle. Taking the manifold all the way off makes it easier later on when it's time to put the caps back on the tubes. It's also easier to keep everything in the proper order and orientation if you replace one membrane at a time. Work your way around to get the cap off. There's really not a secret to this one. Just take care not to damage the tube, cap, or O-rings with a screwdriver. Pull straight up, and to avoid getting soaked, stand back a bit and pull the membrane out very slowly. There is a seal ring on only one end of the membrane. Make a note of which end because it's important that the new membrane goes in at that same orientation. Inspect the inside of the tube for scale and debris. If there is scale or debris, use a stiff, non-metallic brush to remove it. Rinse it with water and drain the water out the bottom of the tube. Apply food-grade, glycerin-based lubricant to make it easier to install the new membranes and the caps. Replace the cap and pay attention to the angle of the hose and the angle of the compression fitting. Tap all the way around to make sure it's seated, and for now, just put the hose connector compression fitting finger tight. Notice that the cap clamp is not on yet. That's because it might be necessary to make minor adjustments to the position of the cap. Once the cap is properly positioned, then install the clamp and tighten the bolts. When replacing the manifold, make sure the elbow on the top of the manifold is on the outside end. The key to getting this manifold perfectly positioned is the ease of starting the compression nuts. There should be no binding. If you feel binding or the nuts want to cross thread, that just means the manifold is not aligned. And when you tighten the compression nuts, there's not a torque specification. Proper tightness is achieved when the last thread disappears inside of the nut. In this close-up, there are no threads visible in this gap. After the last top side hose connection for this membrane, we'll do the one and only bottom side hose connection. Remember, we left this one finger tight earlier. Slide in the rack, flip the breaker back on, and up comes the controller display. Open the inlet valve, and the throttle valve is at the base of the pump. This is the handle that Matt will be turning. First all the way closed, then open 1.5 to 2 turns. Navigate to test outputs again on the controller screen and cycle through the 5-second inlet valve sequence 2 or 3 times. You'll see water flowing through the permeate flow meter. For details on fine-tuning these flow meters, see the 400 series RO system IOM. Now in this same menu, arrow down to RO pump. Press enter and wait for the countdown to stop, then press enter one more time. This should begin pumping permeate to the drain, where you piped it to go earlier. Pump the permeate to the drain for 30 minutes to flush the new membranes. This is a good time to check for leaks on all the newly connected fittings. After 30 minutes of permeate to the drain, press the main menu button, navigate to the operating modes, and put the system in auto mode. That brings us right back to where we started. And after the system has run for a few minutes in auto mode, the TDS shown on the display should be back down to an acceptable range for your application. Thank you for watching, and if you have questions, please call DriSteem Technical Support.